Here's how I budget for the weekend in order to keep dropping body fat and not miss out on my social life. Now, when it comes to getting in shape, most people's problems is managing the ability to stay in a consistent calorie deficit without having to completely eliminate their social life. And most guys have the ability to keep consistent during that Monday to Thursday, Monday to Friday period. However, when it comes to the weekend, they have zero plan in place, they completely overindulge, and their calorie deficit ends up being calorie maintenance, and therefore you never end up seeing the progress that you want. And when it comes to fat loss, it's all about the averages. Whether we're talking about your average step count, your average workouts, or even your average weigh-ins. You don't necessarily have to be in a calorie deficit every single day, but you do have to be in a calorie deficit across the week in order to consistently drop body fat. So what I'm going to take you through now is the adjustments that I would make throughout the week and on the weekend in itself in order to keep myself in that net weekly deficit, but still being able to enjoy a few weekend beers and include my social life. So the strategy that we're going to use is called calorie banking, where you simply bank calories on a day-to-day basis leading up to the weekend or the social to create a buffer for that social event. Now, as we're going into the summer season, let's say we have a barbecue event on the Saturday. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bank roughly 10% of my calories from Monday through to Friday to then allocate that to the Saturday barbecue. So let's say my calories are sat at 2,000 calories per day. Roughly 10% of that will be 200 calories that I'm looking to bank Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Now, obviously you can do slightly less than this. I wouldn't recommend that you do any more. So even if I was to go somewhere between 100 to 200 calories per day, that's still going to bank you roughly 500 to 1,000 calories that you can then contribute towards that Saturday. So then my Saturday total would end up being somewhere between 2,500 to 3,000 calories, which is far easier to play with than just 2,000 calories on its own. Now, the key thing is when you're making these adjustments throughout the week is that you need to prioritize that high quality food. If you're already subtracting 200 calories away from what is already a deficit, it's going to be much harder to maintain your appetite. Therefore, it's going to be even more important to prioritize the food that you need over the food that you want. So I'm going to be still sticking to my high protein, high veggie, and high volume based foods and eating within a specific eating window. I'm going to minimize calorie dense or ultra processed foods. Why? Because I really want to enjoy this social event with a little bit more flexibility come the Saturday. So therefore I'm willing to make more sacrifices during the week in order to enjoy the weekend. So throughout the week, you've now banked these calories. Like I said, anywhere between 500 to 1,000 additional calories accumulatively throughout the week. Now on the day itself, so on the Saturday, the day of the barbecue, we're still going to make some adjustments. So let's say the barbecue event is at approximately 2 p.m. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fast the morning, so I'm going to skip my first meal and I'm still going to have a late lunch or a late breakfast. The reason for this is because I still want to be somewhat full going into the barbecue. Now, most people typically fast all the way up to the social event, be that a lunchtime or an evening event, which, yes, it can work. However, it will also leave you in a position where appetite is going to be super high and you're much more likely to overindulge at the social event in itself. So this is why I recommend a high volume and a high protein based meal before you go to the social. So let's say for me, that's going to be anywhere between 500 to 600 calories. So we deduct that 500 to 600 calories away from my 2,500 to 3,000. That's going to leave me somewhere in the region of 1,900 calories or 2,400 calories for the rest of that day, inclusive of the social. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set a drink limit. It's at a barbecue, it's a hot day, I want to enjoy some beers. I'm going to take bottled beer, which could be approximately 150 calories per beer, and I'm going to bank 4 beers. So that's 600 calories, once again, then removed from my totals. So ending up once again with roughly 1,300 to approximately 1,800 calories left, again, inclusive of the barbecue and the rest of the day. Obviously, you don't have to drink, but I'm pitching to those guys who I know, like me, enjoy a beer. Now, could you have more beers or less beers? Of course you can. Again, adjust it to your preference, but be smart about your choices. I know once I start going into my 5th or 6th plus beer, once again, I'm going to have less food to enjoy at the barbecue itself, and I'm probably more likely to make poorer decisions thereafter. Now, even though I'm at this barbecue and this social event, I'm still going to make tactical choices when it comes to the nutrition. So I'm going to opt for the leaner cuts of protein, whether that is the leaner burgers, the grilled chicken, and then trying to still bulk out the rest of my plates with whatever they have available, whether that is some salads or veggies, as opposed to the more calorie dense potato salads or hot dogs or things of that nature. Now, if you want to, of course, you can still include that stuff, but like I said, you're going to have to limit the quantity. So although we've banked a decent amount of calories to one side, I can't treat this as an all you can eat. Now, let's say you've consumed roughly 1,000 calories worth of food. We've already banked the calories to one side for the alcohol. Then depending on when this social event finishes, you still have a little something pushed away to one side to have when you get home. So that can bridge the gap between the social and going to bed. But that's going to be, again, a low calorie, high protein choice. Simply a protein shake or even some kind of low fat Greek yogurt bowl will sort you out for roughly 300 calories or less and allow you to still stay within that total weekly calorie deficit, and then you can transfer back to your regular calorie intake of 2,000 calories the next day. And this is how, or what I perceive to be, getting the best of both worlds, where I can simply still adhere to my diet, still adhere to my calorie deficit, and still see the week-to-week results that I want. However, I can still be inclusive of the social events that mean something to me. Now, will I expect to still see a spike the next day in scales? Of course I would. I've just consumed an additional 500 to 1,000 extra calories on the day, so I'm expecting to see the short-term spikes. However, those short-term spikes will drop off across the next 24 to 48 hours, and then I'll be back moving in the right direction towards my fat loss goals. Now, this isn't necessarily something that I would recommend to do for every single weekend. There are going to be weekends where you will want to just stay and remain consistent with calories going in throughout the week, Monday through to Sunday. And there are going to be times where you'll want to remove alcohol completely or limit it to just maybe 1 or 2. And it just depends on how quickly you want to see your fat loss results. However, what I'm trying to offer you here is a solution to be able to keep some form of flexibility when it comes to weekends and socials to allow you to get the best of both worlds. But you still have to keep your fat loss goal as the main priority, and you have to do the upfront work in terms of the planning and preparation. Hopefully, as always, guys, you found that useful. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.